Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Just two guys at the coffee shop today. How you doing?
Good, man. Good morning, my brother. How are you?
We had a great run of guests.
Really,
really,
you know what, man?
Really good stuff. I mean, not from me.
Yeah,
my content wasn't that good, but the guest content was great, man.
No, but you got some great jokes, man. You know, there's times I go back and listen at snippets, like when I do the social media, when our stuff drops, you know, I listen to the episode. And 90% of you, I don't hear in the moment, I hear later on, and it's just awesome. But,
yeah, I don't think there was too much humor in the last couple of weeks because it was such good content, serious stuff.
Yeah, hey, I just want to kind of dedicate this episode, if we could, to our number one listener. You weren't prepared for this, but you know, Mikey's mom, you know, bless her, she had to put up with him for quite a number of years.
Yes.
But Mikey's mom was our number one listener, and she just passed away. And so I just thought, that we would dedicate this episode. We're going to talk about sobriety, right? We're going to talk about the joy of sobriety and kind of the backstory of sobriety and kind of, addiction and, kind of a special thing here. But I just want to, Mikey, you're just such a blessing in my life, in so many people's lives that I know. And I've never met your mom, but what I can imagine is that you were quite a blessing in her life also.
Well, probably thank you
here's
very
to
much.
Mom.
Here's to Mom. She's
my mom too, even though I've never met her.
I often refer to as our number one listener. Frankly,
Yep.
I don't know if Mom ever listened to the podcast or not. She knew I did it. She knew
I thought she did. That's awesome.
Yeah, she knew I did something on a Saturday morning, but she was
awesome.
very proud of my recovery. She was, I think that I brought her a sense of relief 7 years ago. And I think she knew immediately that I was on the right track.
Anymore.
She didn't have to worry anymore. I won't go through the drunk log, but I put her through a lot of hell over the first 59 years of my life. And then, the last 7 years, I think she checked me off her list of things to worry about.
That's like that Blue October song, Take Me Off Your Worry List.
Is that right? Wow.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And so, I'm grateful for her, and she's grateful for my sobriety, and so it's a perfect little circle of life. So, love you, Mom.
That's amazing. Okay, so let's. Normally, you lay out the episode. So what we're going to do here is I found something on TikTok, and we're out there on social media, get all kinds of stuff, right? So I found this, and it's probably what I would say, and maybe it was how it hit me, when it hit me. I've listened to it like 10 times. And it came from somebody, Sober Savage. We're stealing it from them. They stole it from somebody else. We rarely come up with an original thought, although some of your jokes are super original, man. I love them. So this is, it runs about 8 minutes. We'll just play it, and then we'll just circle back around at the end and see if we get any comments.
Sounds great.
But it's just, I don't know, man. It just really had a. I'll let you decide for yourself.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Brian.
A great deal of time contemplating the nature of addiction, and I've come to a rather startling conclusion that most people find quite uncomfortable. What if the thing that nearly destroyed you was actually trying to save you? Now, I realize that sounds absurd, perhaps even offensive to those of you who've suffered through the hell of addiction. But stay with me for a moment, because what I'm about to share with you might completely transform how you understand your struggle. You see, I've come to believe that the addict is not a weak person, not a moral failure, not someone who lacks discipline or character. The addict is a mystic who's lost their way, someone whose soul is reaching for transcendence but grasping at the wrong door. And here's what fascinates me. What if your addiction wasn't a curse at all? What if it was a calling? What if God or the universe, or whatever you want to call the fundamental ground of being, has been speaking to you all along through this very suffering? I want to explore with you today something rather profound, a complete reframing of addiction as a form of divine communication. And by the end of this, you may discover that you haven't been cursed, you've been chosen. Let's begin by understanding what we're really dealing with here. Society, in its infinite wisdom, looks at addiction through the narrowest possible lens. Disease, dysfunction, moral bankruptcy, someone who can't control themselves, someone who needs to be fixed, medicated, rehabilitated. The whole approach is terribly mechanical. You're a broken machine that needs repair. But this completely misses the point, you see. Because what we call addiction is actually a spiritual crisis masquerading as a chemical dependency. It's the soul in revolt against the shallowness of ordinary existence. It's someone whose inner being is screaming for depth, for meaning, for connection to something vast and true. And when that connection can't be found through conventional means, the seeking becomes desperate, chaotic, self-destructive. I've often said that the addict is attempting to reproduce the mystical experience through chemistry. You're searching for God in a bottle, in a pill, in a powder. Not because you're weak, but because somewhere deep inside you remember that there's more. That ordinary consciousness, ordinary reality, ordinary life as we've constructed it is simply not enough. The problem isn't the longing. The longing is absolutely sacred. The problem is the method. You see, the substance becomes a false prophet. It promises heaven but delivers hell. It offers a glimpse of unity, of transcendence, and then snatches it away, leaving you more isolated than before. But here's what's extraordinary. God has been trying to redirect you all along, not through punishment, but through the very consequences of the path you've chosen. There's a hunger at the core of addiction that most people simply cannot fathom. And I want to be very clear about what this hunger actually is, because it's been terribly misunderstood. It's not physical craving, though that's how it manifests in the body. It's not psychological dependency, though that's how the doctors diagnose it. It's something far older, far deeper. It's what I call spiritual homesickness. You see, for years you've probably told yourself the story that everyone tells addicts, that you lack willpower, that you're weaker than others, that if you just tried harder, if you had more discipline, more determination, you could stop. You could be like those people who have a drink and walk away, who can take it or leave it. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding of what's actually happening. That insatiable hunger isn't weakness at all. It's your soul remembering its true nature. You're not craving the substance itself. You're craving union. You're craving the dissolution of the illusion of separation. You're craving the experience of coming home to yourself, to the ground of all being, to the infinite consciousness that you actually are beneath all these layers of identity. Every addict is a mystic who's forgotten what they're looking for. The substance gives you a glimpse for a few hours, perhaps even minutes. The walls come down, the ego quiets. You feel connected, whole, complete, and then it ends. And you're back in what I call the prison of ordinary consciousness. So you reach again, not because you're chasing pleasure, but because you've tasted liberation and you simply cannot forget what it feels like. Your hunger is absolutely holy. You're just feeding it poison. Now, here's something quite remarkable about the process of addiction. It systematically dismantles the ego. Addiction takes everything you thought you were and reduces it to rubble. Your career, your relationships, your self-image, your pride, your certainty about who you are and what you're capable of. One by one, every pillar of your constructed identity falls away. And while you're in the midst of this destruction, it feels like pure annihilation. It feels like you're losing everything that matters, like you're failing at the fundamental task of being human. But there's an ancient teaching here that we've forgotten. The false self must die before the true self can emerge. You cannot pour water into a cup that's already full. You cannot build something authentic on a foundation that's rotten. What addiction does, you see, is strip away everything that isn't essential. Every mask, every pretense, every story you've told yourself about who you are, the job title, the relationship status, the reputation, the carefully constructed personality that you believed was you. And when all of that is finally stripped away, when you're empty, hollowed out, reduced to your absolute essence, That's when there's finally room for something real. That's when grace can enter. That's when your true nature can reveal itself. You weren't losing everything. You were being emptied to make room for God. The breaking open is not the end of your story, it's the beginning. Here's something they don't tell you about addiction, and it's quite fascinating. It's often a symptom of feeling too much, not too little, too much. Addicts are frequently people with what I call raw nerve endings. You experience the world in high definition while everyone else seems to be watching standard quality. The joy is sharper. The pain cuts deeper. Beauty is overwhelming. The suffering of others isn't something you merely observe, it's something you absorb into your very being. For years, you've probably thought this was the problem, that you're too sensitive, too emotional, that there's something wrong with your wiring, your ability to cope with reality as it is. So you learn to numb it, to turn down the volume. The substance became a buffer between yourself and the overwhelming intensity of simply being alive. But your sensitivity isn't a flaw. It's a capacity. It's the ability to receive signals that others simply cannot detect, to perceive layers of reality that most people filter out, to sense the subtle frequencies of existence that require a different kind of antenna altogether. Those who are chosen to carry messages must first be able to receive them. Your heightened sensitivity is divine circuitry. You're built to channel something, to transmit something, to bridge something. The raw nerve is not the problem. It's the instrument. You just needed to learn how to play it. At the deepest level, addiction is an attempt to solve what I consider the fundamental human crisis, the feeling of being separate. We walk around in these bodies, locked inside these skulls, experiencing ourselves as isolated units navigating through a hostile universe. And the loneliness of this isn't just emotional. It's existential. It's the core wound of human consciousness. Now, the mystics of every...
I think there was like part 2 to that we lost.
Okay. Well,
But-
I'm still trying to absorb part
that's
one.
why, I'm telling you.
Really good stuff.
Yeah, I'm telling you, that's why you got, just listen to it.
Will we
over
have the
and
link on the,
Yeah.
you can give me a link
Yeah,
direct to that?
I'll figure it out. It's a download and, technology, how that
Okay.
goes.
Yeah.
But man, isn't that powerful?
Way power. I mean, there was so much stuff out of there, and I love the. I mean, there's so much good stuff. I love the minutes of bliss that brought me back to my drinking.
Yep.
There was only a couple of minutes for me that really brought me any kind of internal peace or comfort, and then the rest of it was progression into hell.
You mean in the total path or every time you drank?
Every time I drank, I could capture in a bottle, literally, bliss for a couple of minutes where things felt okay,
Yeah, so
and then I chased that or tried to enhance it, and I failed every time.
So this is the type of thing, and I've literally listened to it 10 times, and I'm going to listen to it 50 more because there's so much meat that comes so fast. It almost needs a line-by-line dissection. But I remember I would look at it differently, where it gave me a relief or identity or, salve or soothing. And then I spent the rest of my drinking days trying to capture lightning twice.
Right.
I was just trying, and I never, it was just like the last time I drank. I mean, I was wanting, so towards the end, I would get like 15 minutes of like, ease or comforting or soothing. And then it was just, the rest of the drunk would be just pain. But the last time I drank, I didn't get that. I got zero. In fact, I drank and I threw it up right away. My body just went, we're not taking this anymore. And so, but one of the things I pulled out of there was, you have to be stripped away of everything. And that, I know not everybody has my stories. Some people have high bottoms. I can remember I had everything in my life stripped away from me in September of 2014. And I sat there basically naked in this world. I had nothing. I had nowhere to go, nowhere to live, no job. I had nothing. Everything I owned fit in my car, pretty much. And I remember praying to God. I'm like, hey, man, because I really believed at that time, God and spirituality was my true north, and I ignored it my whole life. And it was the only thing that I read every book on addiction. I went to all the rehabs. I went to all the detoxes. Nothing worked. And so out of desperation, not about any, it was my last choice. I said, okay. I'm like, I will try this. And if I surrendered, and I said, look, I'll do anything you tell me to do. And then I can remember praying to a God that I couldn't stand. It didn't make sense. God was judgmental. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to give you a shot. I will do whatever you want me to do. My life is not, I have a blank dry erase board. I will do whatever you want me to do. And then I had to put a caveat, just make sure I have the money to do it.
Right.
And then within 2 weeks, my aunt sent me $18,000 to pay for my 4-month program. And he has delivered on that prayer. And that's step 3, right? Made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood him. So that was just, I don't know, you got to listen to it more and more.
I do. The other thing that really jumped out at me, and I don't know when, where, and exactly how it was said, but there is the life that we live. There was a hell and a pain associated with addiction. Okay, then on the other side of sobriety, on the other side of recovery, there are raw. He used the word raw. Life experience, right? So number one, you get the joys of life, and they're magnified, uniquely magnified for the alcoholic, right? And the other pains. We talked about my mom's passing. I mean, to handle that raw was painful, but I appreciated the depth of clarity that I had through this whole process. Does that make any kind of...
The way I look at raw is real, right? And life today, it's funny. I am hyper aware. I love what he said. Hey, we're hyper, right? We're raw wiring. And my wife describes me, just like he does, right? And it's she goes, man, you're an extremist. You're either, super high or you're super low, right? You're never kind of in the middle. You really react to life.
You don't like average.
No, average blows. And a lot of what he said ties into stuff that we've heard from Dr. John.
Sure.
Yep. But the false self, right? The false self has to go away. And hey, for your sobriety, for my sobriety, it hasn't been a light switch, where we turn on the light switch and, we go from alcoholic hell to to non-alcoholic heaven,
right?
In one day, I'm on the slow train. I always say that, but it reminds me kind of the core of who I was in my 4-month program. I remember I was sitting on the river in St. Charles or Geneva, Illinois, and my counselor, we were talking about the cycle, right, and who I was and who I identified with. And she goes, let's tear it down. She goes, who you really are inside, it's who you were in 3rd grade. Yeah. She goes, describe who you were in 3rd grade. And I painted a picture. I was, funny. I was loving. I was helpful. I was, smart. I was a good student. I played the trumpet. I active in my church. I was friendly. I had friends. I was active. I loved skateboarding, right? And so what I did was I fell in love with that 3rd grader. And she goes, that's who you really are. That's who your core is. And she goes, everything else is a byproduct of how you reacted and things you used to react to that. So I fell in love with that 3rd grader again. But man, that's and the one thing I took from there is, I actually get emotional every time because it takes me back and living in that dark hell, and I don't spend a lot of time there. I don't know if you do.
I don't. Yeah. I don't at all. But they talked about the curse you know, and I see people come into the rooms. I was one of them. I came in, I thought, why me? I didn't want to be an alcoholic. Why me? You know, my life is over now. Alcohol is involved in every element of my life. From every element of my life, a drink was involved, right? So, but the way he framed it out, okay, it's not, if you stop looking at it as a curse and instead look at it as a calling, that I'm chosen now, I have an opportunity to help the next guy. I can't help the next guy who's living in alcoholic hell if I didn't go through it, right? So that curse is now, I'm able to use that as my calling, and there's nothing grander than purpose in your life and knowing you have a divine calling in your life to try and help the next struggling alcoholic. Try. I can't achieve it, but I can do my part. That's a blessing beyond measure.
Yeah, it's funny. My my daughter called me last night. She needed the code to get on Disney Plus, right? And so she called me, and I answered. She goes, "You know what I notice?" I'm like, "What's that?" She goes, "You are always available." You know, and that's like we say, "Hey, I want to make sure I'm available for when that alcoholic calls." Yeah, right. You know, we always leave our phone numbers in these meetings, and very rarely, I mean, I've never gotten a call, but what my job is, I make sure that I'm available. And so when you talk about that crisis,
you're available this morning, Glenn.
Yeah,
you're available this morning on podcast land. Yeah, right.
But I sit there and say that's where I think, you know, we use the term that God's turned our message into a message, right?
Our message into a message.
Yeah,
right.
What did I say? Crisis.
I don't know.
Yeah, our mess into a message. And what I really believe from walking and living this path and living with you and watching you work and the impact that sobriety has on people. You know, we just went to our coach's fundraiser dinner, right. and they had, you know, three or four stories of, you know, guys sharing their stories. Amazing impact, right. From, I don't want to maybe use the term useless souls to useful souls, right. And I just look at sobriety as being a superpower. I really do, and I also say the spirituality that came along and associated with sobriety, that the path that we're on, I mean, it's a superpower.
Well, it's with that spirituality that you begin to realize why you are where you are. What had to happen for me to be the whole person I am today?
Yep. And it's not one light switch,
right? It's not.
It is working on the foundation for a long time, making sure the concrete's set. It is learning tools, trying tools. It didn't work. Let me try another tool. It's working with community, with others, right? And hey, just a plug. You know, when we talk about spirituality, we actually have a sister or cousin podcast out there. Called God as We Understand Him.
You can get to it through the resource room.
Yeah, the resource room, or just it's on any podcast. Just you know, search on any podcast platform. God as We Understand Him. We've got, you know, that's come back alive. We only had 30 episodes on it, but I mean, people are listening. People are searching that spirituality, and the thing I love about it is we're not sitting here preaching. You know, all what we did is share how we fumbled, how we questioned, how we cursed, what we learned, how we, you know, surrendered, and how we're blessed, and how it works, you know, and we don't have it all figured out, you know, but we're on the path, and we're sharing our story with people that are on the path.
And I want to remind everybody as we close out here that sobriety has impacted me in a positive way, and I'm forever grateful. But there is a net gain for those around us, and we become blessings in other people's lives. My mom prayed for me. I know she did, for me to stop the struggle. She wanted the struggle to stop. Okay, that prayer was answered. But in addition to that, my sobriety has positively benefited my children, my wife, my mother, my sisters, my brothers, my friends.
Yeah, so you and I are way different. You had an entire network that you had to rebuild with, and I had nobody.
Right.
I would say other than two people, my two daughters,
Right.
everybody else in my life is new.
Right.
I started from zero.
Yeah, isn't that great?
And
you say that with a smile, and I love that.
I did.
Yeah.
And there's times. I mean, my parents had passed. And I don't have anybody in my life that knew me alcoholically.
Right.
Now my sponsor saw me struggle, but everybody else, I should say my sponsor, because he was absolutely there when I was struggling. And so they don't know that Glenn. Right, but you went back and you rebuilt, and they really see the value of.
They see the difference.
Yeah, difference.
It's incredible.
You can't say it doesn't work.
Right.
Can't say AA
you
doesn't
can't
work.
say. Well, you know what? It's worked for me.
Worked for me.
Maybe it didn't work for somebody else, but I bought into it, hook, line, and sinker.
Surrendered and
Love
say,
you.
I will do what you tell me to do. Hey, man, sorry about your mom. Number one listener.
That's right. Love you.
I think it's funny you said you're not even sure if she ever listened. That's awesome.
Love you, man. Love you, Mom.
All right, see you.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.